One of the most enigmatic and unusual duos to emerge on the French music scene in 1976 was ZNR, the duo of Hector Zazou and Joseph Racaille. And from their debut album Barricades 3, the track
Armistice Couronné de Feuillages.
Here now it's like that unaccompanied piano, a couple of bars of that, and then that synthesizer, that little distorted synthesizer comes in and sort of like interlocks with it kind of, but the interplay between those two is quite. I'm still trying to take it apart, piece it together. It's how many sounds do we got going on? We got just like piano. We got like that one distorted synth, kind of low. We got another. We got like two. We had two of them. Then I counted like I think four of them by the time I paused. That that. We got kind of that sort of muted synth sound. Then we've got that fuzzier one. So some bars of three in there. I'm trying to count this. It seems like they're just kind of randomly changing the meter. Time signatures, like sometimes they just befuddle me. It's like I'll like say, wow, that's an odd meter, and I'll try and count it, and then after a few bars, a few repetitions, I can't seem to. I can never find the starting bar or where it begins, and then I think, oh wait a minute, oh give it up. I'm losing track of the music here trying to count. This is like so simple, so bare, and yet it's so complex. The way these instruments are interlocking with their notes. These different keyboards. Yeah, that piano's doing like this one, this one. The cadences are different between this. That kind of high, trebly synth kind of sounds like the synthesizer used on the theme to In Search Of. Let's take a look at who is playing what. We get on this track, Joseph Racaille. I'm not sure exactly if that's how his name is pronounced. Responsible for arrangements, plays piano and the ARP 2600 synthesizer. And Hector Zazou also plays the ARP 2600, as well as the VC-S3. So basically, I guess they've got three synthesizers going and a piano. Yeah, I heard three sounds there. Two kind of fuzzy synths, one kind of doing that kind of hiccupy sound, and a piano. Yeah, the way that the piano's playing kind of fast, and then it kind of just scales down, and then the other one kind of just plays at a different speed slightly. Then now I like that call and response between the two of them. There was nothing like this in 1976 before like these guys came along, and then suddenly this whole thing of like a duo, like a minimal piano and little synthesizer. I mean, this, let's just say they started something really big, and you could take it in multiple directions. You could say that a lot of the minimal wave, cold wave, that would come in a few years later, particularly in duo form, could have. I could see elements of like Tuxedo Moon. I guess it doesn't really even matter who actually heard them in this. They presaged like developments that were upcoming. You could maybe say some of the more avant-garde moments of OMD, or like yeah, some of the French duos of the early '80s. The Dalek I album from 1980 for that Liverpool duo. Like, yeah, the other half of like I think the ID, or yeah. It's almost kind of there's also there's a little bit of kind of an Eno-esque element. Like he had just but he himself, Eno himself, had just kind of started hitting at this like on Another Green World the prior year. But this, once again, very much has its own sound. I mean, most people, it's funny, a lot of people, I guess if you're going to trace this to Eno, you got to give this credit for being very, very unique and having a. And I say that fully acknowledging that there were a lot of artists who copied Another Green World's sounds and textures, lock, stock, and barrel, and didn't have 1/10 the originality that this has. Years ago in the Wayside Music catalog, there was a description about this release, drawing an analogy between bands like Artzoid and Universe Zero, saying that they were all kind of in the 20th century classical avant-garde vein. The big difference being is that whereas AZ and UZ drew from Bartok and Stravinsky, ZNR drew from Satie and Debussy. And like, of course, Eric Satie has that one piece that's been very influential and very much covered by many artists. I gotta say that my own research into Satie as well as Debussy has been limited to like library recordings that I taped, and it's been years since I played them. I know enough to know that basically his name is meant to invoke kind of minimal, unaccompanied, bare bones, light, simple, quirky piano etudes. Yeah, I like the analogy nonetheless, and like the names like Bartok and Stravinsky are supposed to invoke more the chamber, the kind of violin, oboe, cello, bass, like chamber, like dramatic minor key type music, like I don't know, tritone usage that bands like UZ and AZ were used quite liberally, influences they appropriated. And so they would represent more the dark, kind of hellacious side, and this would be kind of more the twee and the twee kind of toy shop. Yes, ZNR with the track
Armistice Couronné de Feuillages,
which translates to Armistice Crowned with Foliage. Let's hear another track from the album.
Le Grand Compositeur vu de face,
Which translates to The Great Composer Seen from the Front. I love that just two chord. This actually is similar to that dun 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 that Satie, that really popular piece by him. No. Going like three half steps, going like a full step and a half, like B, like G, B flat, um, G flat, E flat, E. It's like the first keyboard is just playing like the tonic of the two notes, and it's like the second keyboard that comes in and drops the second note is like throwing in like a major seventh, I think. Now that adds a totally different element altogether. That little tingly, bright. I think I'm hearing. It sounds like they're playing around with the strings on a grand piano. Yeah. Okay, there's three things going on. There's that boom, boom. There's the tingly little synthesizer, and then there's some fooling around. It's almost like that. Like they're treating the strings of a grand piano like a zither. Yeah, like moving some kind of like metal instrument across those strings. I wonder what Captain and Tennille would have thought of this, like, because in some of their they had like this one kind of weird instrumental deep cut on their first album, and they would sometimes throw like weird sounds over like their campfire ballad style. I don't know. I just that comes to mind because they were a pretty let's just say they were kind of all over the map and could be kind of goofy at times. They may have found this music kind of funny, kind of amusing in sort of a humorous way. Oh yeah, this is really invoking that Satie piece. In a kind of less original move, they would actually cover that Satie piece outright on their next album. Which is all right. It's a bit more mannered, though. I prefer just the real quirky sounds and primitive, bleepy, fuzzed out analog sense of this album. It seems like we have an electric piano, an actual piano, and some tinkly synth. Let's see what is going on here. Okay, a few more hands, a few more fingers on the pie. Arranged by Louise, Alcazar. Bass, clarinet, Patrick Portella. Oh yeah, a side player. Him and Joseph Racaille would later do a split album together. Electric piano with echo, Joseph Racaille. Piano, Hector Zazou. Synthesizer, ARP 2600 synthesizer by Gilly Bell. Yeah, so some of the additional players. Actually, I think on the second album, I remember there were like pictures of like five men, and the label had like a band, all of them dressed up in 20s garb, which I guess was kind of their look. Yeah, like flat caps and yeah, the whole like, and I think they're technically a duo, just augmented on a few tracks on this album. But I think the second album they may have actually technically been like a quartet or a quintet. something when it hits that B flat, I swear I'm hearing a major seventh in there. That one of those little tinkly instruments is throwing in like an A. And then on that where it goes like F sharp E, like when it hits E, it's there's like a fourth note that's being thrown in to alter the E. A D G B flat. This is so simple and yet so effective. It's just like take two notes, and like every other bar, and then move it down, like, and then just kind of like between each like tonic on one instrument, throwing a bit of tinkliness on some other instruments. Hear that slightly pitch bent, that one kind of sustained high sound. They didn't reveal what was doing that. Yeah, these credits didn't that sound that I swore was like strings on a grand piano, like being tinkered with. Something's coming in. Yeah, as a matter of fact, yeah, didn't I see? Yeah, bass clarinet. Yeah, I actually was thinking, yeah. Yeah, let's hear some of that bass clarinet. It's just like mangling things. These little sounds are kind of like turning into like this big scribbly ball. That was ZNR with the track
Le Grand Compositeur vu de face.
Yes, from their 1976 album Barricade 3, their first of two, released on Isadora, and yeah, just a very original sound, comparable to no one that had come along beforehand, really. But presaging some of what would come along in the aftermath, like particularly like, especially between like 1979 and 1983 or so, like on both sides of the channel, and even reflected somewhat like in Tuxedo Moon. And it doesn't really even matter if, like, say, no one in Tuxedo Moon ever heard of this band at the time. What really matters is that this band is kind of like a missing link in between the deconstructivist art rock of like Roxy Eno and that whole school, and the cold wave, minimal wave that emerged around the turn of the decade, both in Europe, in like France, with bands like Casse Product and like Mathematics Modern, and like the Italian band Charisma, and English bands like OMD, Dalakai, like John Fox, Metamatic, his first solo album, and yeah, Tuxedo Moon, as I mentioned. And this band, of course, having, I guess, more of kind of like an avant-garde classical orientation to them as well. And so it would be a stretch to, to call this, to really portray this as rock in any way. And once again, that doesn't matter. It nonetheless had a considerable rhythmic element to it because it was well measured and punctual despite being very twee and tinkly and quiet. Another one of the best descriptions I've ever read about this album was on the Gibraltar Encyclopedia of Progressive Rock back in the late 90s, where they used the phrase quiet deconstruction. Yeah, and I like that. I like that description quite a lot. And another album that would be influenced by this host, and probably actually was influenced because I'm pretty sure these guys, I'm pretty sure that the party in question had heard this album. The first Aksak Mobile album that came out the following year, Mark Hollander, who had briefly been in Kos, yeah, and yeah, Belgian musician, and who had also interacted with Mark Moulin, and would also come into contact with the Henry Cow team, and yeah, and this album, of course, has would gain quite a cult. Even if it didn't get much attention when it was first released, it gained quite a cult following in the decades thereafter, like because it was constantly being reissued within the RER sphere of labels, like the Chris Cutler run, that kind of grapevine of reissue networking. Yeah, and so it's well known among like fans of the quote rock in opposition Rio genre, if you could call that a genre. More kind of like a network of loosely connected kind of avant-garde European acts. Anyway, yes, ZNR, two great tracks off Barricade 3, one of the most unique and just one of those records that you have to hear in order to understand, and you have to just let it sink in. Descriptions can only do it so much justice. Anyway, for more Rubies and Sapphires from the two ZNR albums, see the directory of albums by French artists linked in the description below. Like and subscribe and follow me on social media, and leave a comment if there are any observations you have about the two tracks we just heard, the little bits, the little interactions between the tinkly, raw, bare keyboards, back and forth, call and response, interlocking on select bars, and just completely going their own way on others. And yeah. And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most air travel trimaximalist, signing off.